pet. This where the real ones show up. Stand there for the ones who know what's up. It's the album where the realest pull up. Game over, that's when the truth fall out the cup. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Last call, Sutton and Simmons. Last call, uncut opinions. Last call, what the polish won't say. Pull the stool up, the rounds on the way.
And we are honored and privileged to be joined by, he covers the NBA for Bleacher Report. You can check out his work, current stuff up there right now. Unbelievable job. And he's also the capologist extraordinaire. I suggest you all to really look at all of his work. It's fantastic. And that's none other than Eric Pincus. Eric, thank you so much for coming on.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
And
Eric,
I'm so, and that's Simmons. Simmons, go ahead.
No, that's fine. Thanks for coming on, Eric. Appreciate it. Yeah, what's your thoughts? Obviously, I know you're a local LA guy. Have you had the chance to really delve into the playoffs much here? You're looking forward to the finals. Of
course. Yeah, no, I'm excited. It's a repeat of something we've had a long time ago. I mean, what, 99? Tim Duncan's real coming out as an elite player, and I think we get the same result in that we have another generational player in Victor Wembanyama. I love what the Knicks have done. The Knicks have been just a blast this playoff, but man, it's going to be tough. So hey, I mean, I'm not going to count New York out. I think they're playing at the peak NBA level. In this
sounds like you are, Eric. Sounds like you are.
Eric.
However,
I'd actually. Sorry.
It's the waves of attacking guards that the Spurs have that you're dealing with. Like if you're dealing with Cleveland, you're dealing with Donovan Mitchell, you're dealing with James Harden, very, very talented. But there's something about the attack of Fox, Harper, Castle, you have Vassell, and we're not even talking about Victor Wembanyama, that is this incredible force around the rim. So hey, I want to see the Knicks have I want it to go 6. I want it to go 7. And I have a lot of history in New York. I'm originally from, I was born in Queens, Forest Hills, moved out to Long Island, been in LA since I was, second grade. So I still have a lot of New York family. So I'm pulling for, on that side of my family, the Knicks. But realistically, I'm going to go Spurs.
Wow, sounds like you're really all in on the Spurs. Now, to that, I would say, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this question because we have, of course, Sam's a diehard Knicks fan. Me, I don't really have a dog in the fight. I'm much more of a college basketball hoops junkie. But so many of my friends, and obviously the local area with the Knicks, could we, if you were to really sum up Leon Rose, and I know Sam has a bunch of different other questions he wants to get into, but if you could sum up what Leon Rose has truly done over the last, let's call it 36 to 48 months, how would you best describe that in terms of how he's been able to build that team?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, he went all in, which they traded a ton of picks to get Bridges. They traded pieces to get OG. What they've done is obviously tremendous. I think that the vibe of the Knicks actually started to change when Phil Jackson took over. I know that wasn't a beloved period. I don't think the fans look back at that and say, "Oh yeah, the Phil Jackson era was great." But one change that happened around then is that the team stopped just throwing away all of their assets, their picks, and started to build more, the right way in terms of making good decisions over a long period of time. Now, I don't think it really crystallized until the Leon Rose era, and they've just gone slowly, just get better each year. They went all in, but they went all in sensibly, right? You have an elite guard, and who the hell knew that Jalen Brunson was this good? I knew that he was really good. Mm-hmm. Coming into the league, we knew he was really good, but we didn't know he was star player good. We knew he was an NBA player. He was probably a sixth man. That was his expectation. You know what I mean? Karl Anthony Towns, I wrote years ago, before he ever got to New York, that he was eventually going to end up with the Knicks. And every so often I get people sending me their replies to that where they just crapped on me for saying, "Oh, it'll never happen," or "Oh, it's a terrible idea. No, don't do that. No." And it was something that was in the works for a long period of time, and kind of shows that the Knicks have been diligent. They have a path, they have a plan. Now everyone has a plan until you get punched in the mouth. Let's see what happens this next week. But
Eric,
I enjoyed watching them.
we got to give a lot of credit to Mike Brown also because listen, Cat did change his game. He's a point center right now. And going back to the Leon Rose conversation, he traded the first rounder for Josh Hart. It doesn't seem like much at the time. That was a big piece. You're saying not many people thought Brunson was going to be great. Granted, you're right. Understood. We also didn't pay attention to what he did that series when Luka went down. I mean, this is a very methodical build. It's very unorthodox because there's not a lot of drafted players. Literally, the only guy that was drafted on this team that's impactful is Mitchell Robinson. Everyone else is acquired via trade or which one way or another. Going all in on Bridges, giving up those 5 picks. What are those picks materializing to? Nothing. Literally nothing. Ask the Nets that. So I give all the credit in the world. I give my flowers, pun intended, I guess, to Leon Rose. Tremendous job. Mike Brown as well. And obviously you see the Knick fan in me coming out and gushing. And when you told me that you think the speed and the athleticism of the guards of the Spurs are going to give the Knicks fits, the one thing I will tell you is a lot of the Knicks points were generated via fast break and via transition. And that's one thing that's not going to be there this series because, like we said, they are faster and they're going to get back faster. However, Wemby, as we know, when he plays poorly or subpar, they're not deep enough to win. I mean, their three-point shooting is sporadic. It's not lights out. And if you wear on him and put OG on him and put Mitch on him if he's healthy and put all these big dogs on him, he's going to be a little tired. So I don't think it's going to be Spurs in 5. I know you said you wanted to go to 6. I think it's going to 7 regardless.
Well, yeah, I have it. I think I have it in 6. I don't think this is like, to me, like a 5-game series is a near sweep. Like that's like one team is demonstrably better than the other. And so, no, this is 6 or 7. If I say 7, it's a coin flip. This is I favor the Spurs just based on how I see the two teams. But the Knicks are cohesive. They have a plan. They have a pecking order in terms of what they're trying to accomplish. It's not like there was some of that in Cleveland where, you know, sometimes it's the Harden show, sometimes it's the Donovan Mitchell show, sometimes the bigs are being forgotten. Like there's that kind of lack of purpose that the Knicks just don't have. And you credited Mike Brown. I got to know Mike in LA when he coached the Lakers. He's one of my favorites coming. I've one of the blessings of what I've done as a career is I've gotten to know some really tremendous people. Mike's one of them. I was coaching my girls' teams back then. My daughters were all at the rec league, and we would always get to the championship. We wouldn't always win the championship. We were always there. And I remember talking to Mike about like zone defenses and trying to figure out how we were going to win when we really only had like 3 skilled players out of like the entire roster. Like he took the time always to just like talk. He's a real human being. He cares. He's generous. He's thoughtful. And he's also grown because he was back then viewed as just a defensive coach who wasn't imaginative offensively. I think he learned a lot on his stint with Golden State, which was such a incredible run offensively. So yeah, I'm happy for Mike. Tibbs was a great coach, still a great coach. But I think the course had been run, and putting in Mike and letting him do his thing. I root for people, and Mike's one of those people.
Yeah, but and it's funny. I mean, Sam, I thought he was going to rant on for 30 minutes here about the Knicks. But with you just mentioned quickly is just, you touched on with Mike in the youth level, you guys had only 3 skilled players playing zone defense. Obviously those are some of the, high leverage sort of conversations within youth basketball. Are you halting development, playing zone defense as opposed to going man to man at a youth level and stuff like that? Or, are you pressing full court? Just to bludgeon a team out the building, or you could actually go through those.
As you can see, Eric, he's a coach for youth basketball. So I saw his eyes light up when you said that. By the way, did your daughter's team succeed? Were they actually a successful team?
Oh, I mean, my youngest played with Shaquille's daughter, Miara, and they have a banner up. My middle and my youngest were all-stars. The oldest did it just for fun, and she had a blast with it, but it wasn't as serious. But the
reason why I was asking is because if you have two-time coach, I was asking if you have 2-time coach of the year, Mike Brown, giving you help, and you didn't win, that's on you, man.
Oh shoot! I remember we had a championship game which we didn't win against Miara, but I was talking to Ron Artest, Meta World Peace, about like the strategy that I had, and he loved it, and it was brilliant, and it worked until about 3 quarters, until my middle daughter, who was our center, got her fourth foul, you get 5 and you're out at that level. So we had to take her off of Miara, who was like a foot taller than everybody. It was like a Wembanyama situation where, like, you know, and the strategy worked. We can get into the nuts and bolts of it, but it was taking advantage of the rules to a T, and it worked to an extent until, like, at some point talent. It's hard when we were not as talented, because this girl's playing right now. I think she's transferring. God, where she's transferring somewhere. She was at USF. Where was she? University of Florida, something like that. And then she's transferring. But Miara's a great kid. And yeah, I love youth basketball. I coach girls. So I have an appreciation for the W from my life. I live in a house with my wife and 3 daughters, and even the dog is a girl. So we're it's a very female dominated house. But that said, Mike taking the time, it's one of those things where you just, like, you have to be, to an extent, a good person on some level to be a head coach. Now, that may not always be the case. But generally speaking, I think, like, you have to be able to connect and reach people and care about people to get them to run through walls for you. And I that's just my experience with Mike.
Right, and the stories that come out of the Knicks locker room is that he was willing and able to change the strategy. It wasn't Brunson Hero Bowl anymore. It was, what can we make this work? They were down 2-1 of the series to Atlanta. Things were looking bleak. People were calling for his head. He wasn't all of a sudden, he's the best coach ever. So the willingness to change and the willingness to listen and allowing the players to have a voice is a pretty underrated aspect when it comes to head coaching in the NBA. And not many people, that's one thing that Tibbs, as much as I love him to death, he wasn't willing to adapt. He wasn't willing to, it was his way or no way, his 6-man rotation, 7-man rotation, and that's about it. But Mike Brown, we see, is more adaptable, and that's a pretty big quality to me when it comes to head coaching, and something we've been lacking.
Yeah, I think dogma is where you're just, like, so convinced that you're right. There's so many coaches or players or human beings that you just, like, they're so convinced that they're right that they just go down with the ship when they're just not right. And that's just not how basketball is, because the other coach is brilliant too. Whoever, if you're coaching the NBA, there's only 30 of them. They're among the greatest coaches in the world, and they're making adjustments to what you're doing, and then you're adjusting to their adjustment, and then their adjustment to their adjustment. It's a chess game. That said, you have to be open-minded. You have to listen to your players. You have to adjust to the talent that you have, and who's working together well, who's feeling it. And if you just say, this is how we're going to go down, I love Thibs, but I did feel like there was a rigidity that he coaches with, where he believes he's right, and he's probably not wrong, but it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong, because sometimes even being right, you could still be wrong.
Exactly.
And so I want to see what, this is a great puzzle for the Knicks. It's a huge challenge, but it's also a challenge for the Spurs. And so, they have to deal with Brunson, they have to deal with Cat, and they have a long list of wings that can cause problems. And let's see how it goes. Like I said, I looking at the balance, I have Spurs on top, but in 6. I want a long series, and I'll be happy either way, because as you said, I don't really have a dog in the fight. I root for quality basketball. I root for health. I want to see the best games in the world, the best players. Let's get to it.
And this is a dream matchup for the NBA, because you couldn't script it any better than this. You have the New York hype train, which is always good for the league, and then you have the alien, the up and coming superstar, the new face of the league. The passing of the torch from LeBron now is a perfect way to usher it in. So to me, this is like the greatest potential matchup that NBA could have asked for, and I think we're in for a treat. I think it's going long, like you said. I got the Knicks because they're my team. I know Simmons being the Knick hater, I know he's got the Spurs, but
no, yeah, I mean that's a whole nother story. But Eric, let me ask you. So, of course, our viewers, as Sam mentioned in the intro, in terms of you being a salary cap extraordinaire. So, if you could just sort of go through the 101 of just the NBA salary cap,
Sure.
in a few minutes, and just A to Z on that.
Aprons,
Sure.
etc.
Yeah, no, obviously it's a complex topic, but the general gist of the NBA system is that it has a soft cap, and there are some leagues that have a hard cap, and the NFL, the WNBA, they have hard caps, which means you can't spend over a certain amount. Your budget is your budget. You can't spend past that. You can't spend $1. You have too many players hurt, you got to cut players to sign other players. And the NBA is very different. It has a soft cap, and so you can spend theoretically to whatever you want to spend. However, you have a certain number of tools, And what the NBA learned is that, like, what I don't know, let's say about 30 years ago, they put in a luxury tax. It was designed to try to stop owners from spending too much. And to be fair, that kind of still works because there are, I don't know, about half the league or more that they won't pay tax. They may be owned by a billionaire or multi-millionaire, but they just don't want to put that money in. They don't want the product to run at a loss. And then you have a team like the Bucks, who, from my understanding, they put as much money as they could to win around Giannis, and they won one championship. It's been kind of difficult the last few years, and maybe he gets traded. But the point being is that, like, if you're Steve Ballmer and you have more money than basically anybody in the world other than like a handful, you could theoretically spend until you can't run out of money, so you could just spend. So they put in these aprons, and what these aprons are is it's a way of equalizing it so that the more you spend, the fewer tools you have to spend on other players. So you can always keep your guys. Like the Knicks can keep paying Cat and OG and Jay, all these guys, but it's going to get harder and harder to add other players. So you could always get minimum guys, but beyond that, you're kind of stuck. There's always your draft picks, but beyond that, that's it. So trades get difficult. You can't add money via trade. So they've made it difficult, and difficult is not bad. There's other elements to it because the players and the owners split the money. Like the NBA, let's just be simple. They split it half, 50-50. So if they bring in, say, 10 billion, the players get 5 billion. But if the teams are just overspending, then we run into some issues because then the players get too much. If they get too much, then every player loses up to 10% of their money, and it gets to be this mess. So they're not just trying to stop spending to be cheap. They're trying to make sure that the league is healthy and that the players get the money they're supposed to get, because if a team spend too much, then players, like this next year, players are only going to get about 95% of their money. So if you're a $10 million player, you only get about 9.5 because the team spent too much. So if you're a player, you only have 3 or 4 or 5 years in the league. That's not great. So I don't want to get too deep into it, other than to say that I'm always happy to talk. And if people want to learn that stuff, reach out. But it's a growing field in the NBA, and the teams that have better strategy do a better job. And Brock, who with the Knicks does a great job. The Knicks, in my opinion, years and years ago, were not great with strategy. It was sort of, just do whatever. And that's simplifying. Obviously they had a purpose, but you could see when a team is making smarter, more thoughtful, diligent decisions. And the Knicks have been doing it now for however many years. And you watch their transactions, you're like, okay, I get it. I see what they're trying to do. Or if I don't get it, I'm reaching out to somebody to try to understand it, because I feel like there's a purpose there. There's a design. And so manipulating the rules is a big part of it, not illegally, but playing, we talked about the Clippers and potential illegalities, they exist. But generally speaking, you can work within the rules, be clever, be creative, work with agents, work with players, and do something special. But it is hard to stay on top. And the Thunder are facing that right now, because their tax bill is going to go from 0 this year to almost 300 million next year, depending on what they do and if they keep the same team. So it gets real expensive real quick in the NBA to field teams at this elite level.
What was the percent of their profits in that, in terms of what they'll be spending in terms of their tax for the Thunder?
In terms of profit, so like the in terms of profit, it's not really based on like the net; it's on the gross. Mm-hmm. So, like if the gross of what the league brings in is 10. The players are going to get 5, and that includes benefits, et cetera, et cetera. That's their money. The other 5 goes to the teams and the league, and that's what has to that has to, if each individual team is profitable, that's going to be based on their market. That's going to be based on their budget. So like Milwaukee is in a smaller market relative to the Knicks, certainly. Let's say that they're making it up. Let's say they're 20th in market size. They're not top 20, so somewhere 20 to 30, and they're spending top 5 money, then they're probably running at a loss. Whereas, there's a lot of teams that don't spend a ton of money, do really well. Knicks bring in a ton of money. They're not spending egregious amounts of tax. They're spending in the tax, but it hasn't been outrageous. The Warriors were spending crazy money. But then, what they can charge in San Francisco is very different than what Memphis can charge, right? Like they're just not going to bring in at what you call the gate, how much they're in tickets, jersey sales, all of that, what they're charging for their TV deals, which is you have your national TV deal, broadcast deal, which is obviously now Amazon and NBC, ABC, ESPN. I'm probably leaving out something, NBA TV, whatever it is. And formerly TNT, which is my grandpa, daddy, or no, the Bleacher Report's owned by TNT. So,
I didn't know that.
But
Wow.
I did a bunch of Good Times did a bunch of NBA TV, but everything changes in the world, so you adapt. But the broadcast deals that are for the local markets are local revenue. So what the Lakers are going to make is going to be more than what the Knicks, the Knicks, oh, sorry, not the Knicks, the Grizzlies, but the Knicks,
of course,
and the Rockets. There's a few teams that like own their network, and it gets a little fuzzy math. So
And then we see
there's
that's
all these rules
a
on how to
potential
sort through that.
problem. Sorry to interrupt you. That's a potential problem in baseball because their new CBA is going to be a pain to figure out. And one of the hardest parts are all these local teams with their local networks like Yes Network, Nesson, etc. How are you going to figure out a way to you can't capitalize in your own market with your own TV deals? So that sounds like it ties into the same way in the NBA.
Yeah, there are special rules for the teams that own their you have to include all the revenue that every team makes goes into this theoretical proverbial bucket, and that's what we call basketball related income. That's like the 10 million or billion rather, or 11 billion that we divide up. So there's accountants, there's literally people whose job it is with the NBA and then the NBPA. NBPA is the National Basketball Players Association. That's the union. Their jobs year round are to study BRI and they're taking in reports from each team on their income. They have the national income and they're doing audits all year. And then they have competing audits. They argue it out. And June 30th is New Year's Eve. New Year's Day is July 1st in the NBA. On June 30th, they announce the results. We get a new salary cap. The year starts over and contracts roll over. And then we have all the chaos and craziness of signings and trades. And we have the draft coming up. So, this is the most wild and busy period of my calendar, which is funny because I'd be with my kids and I'd go to a school event or something and all the dads would be like, so what do you do in the off season? You just vacation? I'm like, no, June and July is like busiest time of all. Like that's when everything is happening. So
Eric,
great
yeah,
time.
what I would say is that's great to know, and I love all the insight. I appreciate it. That's the one thing I would say is in the previous agreement, weren't we trying to incentivize teams? Of course, the Gilbert Arenas rule, bird rights. Weren't we trying to incentivize teams to pay their players? You make an all-star game, all NBA team, where you can get larger contracts with the team that drafted you. Wasn't that of the initial plan?
So that's one aspect. So one concern that teams had, like years ago, there was an issue where it wasn't clear
because if you draft and you develop and you have 3, 4, 5 assets, and another team was only able to draft and develop 2 assets, you shouldn't be hamstrung because you developed more assets internally as a franchise than another team, and that's essentially what the second and third apron is right now.
So it hasn't been a third. So first apron and second apron. But,
right. Sorry.
Don't worry. I'm sure they'll put in a third by the next 2 days. So you're just predicting the future. No. So it's very complex and it's very nuanced. And so Joe Lacob, one of the owners of the Warriors, came out and said, I believe that the players that we draft shouldn't be taxed. We shouldn't be paying a penalty. The problem is does that also come with a promise from Lacob that they won't spend egregiously? Like the Warriors over a period dating back to the last CBA, so 2017 is when that kicked in, right? They spent more than anybody to I'll round it up, close to 700 million in tax, whereas the Clippers were about half that. I'm rounding numbers grossly, but let's say 350, and then some teams were in the 200, a couple in the hundreds, and then most were 20 of the teams though were net earners in the tax system. They didn't even spend. They earned more over that period of time. So the Warriors were spending outrageously to the point where they were costing everyone money. Draymond Green complained about aprons, but Draymond Green is only going to get 95% of his money this year. Last year, he only got about 91% of his money. So if teams are spending, then the players aren't getting their money. And so, like, if Lacob is going to say, don't tax us on these players, it has to come with some
Spending
promise, which
restrictions.
you can't trust that it has to be a legislative promise that they won't spend after. Fine, if we won't tax you, but you can't spend past a certain point. And the reality is, okay, so like your question about these supermax is kind of what you touched on. There was an issue where some players would look at, like, say, a 5-year deal with one team and with their own team, and a 4-year deal with another team, and look at like Houston or Miami or Memphis or Orlando, the Texas teams where they don't have state tax, and they do the math and they're like, actually over I don't have to do 5 years. What if I did 4 years and compare 4 years staying, 4 years going? It's not that different. So they wanted the owners, the NBA, they wanted to give extra incentives so you wouldn't lose like a Jason Tatum or whatever, Joel Embiid, or the stars of the league at those times.
Right.
And so they did put in some rules that allowed for these supermax. And what they allow for, instead of a player who would normally get 25%, they would get 30%. Or at a different level, if they were 30%, they could jump to 35%. So you can get a significantly larger number, but you could only really get that from the team you're on, the team that brought you. And so that is a rule. I think it's kind of outmoded personally. I don't think it's necessary anymore. However, good luck changing it. Like, I don't think the NBPA would want that to change. I don't know if the NBA would or wouldn't. I can make a compelling argument that that's just an outmoded way of doing business. They don't need to do that anymore. The contracts are so large that if you're offering someone $250 million and it's not the Supermax, but it's crazy. I mean, that's like crazy money for the best stars in the world. For anybody, that's crazy money. So, and I respect it. I'm not saying they shouldn't get it. I'm saying it is enough money that I don't know that we need to, now you can get, instead of 250, we're going to let you get 3 something. It's like, it should be enough at this point. But all that said,
Right.
there's always these competing interests of.
It sounds very convoluted,
trying to
honestly.
make the best way. You want to give teams the best chance to keep their stars for 10. That was something David Stern, the late David Stern, Adam Silver's predecessor, that he really pushed and valued, is that if you get a Tim Duncan or a Victor Wembanyama through the draft or whatever, the NBA wants you to have that player for a decade. And after a decade, if they want to move on, so be it. Now you have Dallas, who traded Luka early, whatever. Like, there's always going to be whatevers. But generally speaking, that's going to happen. You're going to have a player for their first 4 years, and then you're going to have an extension that goes another 5 years. So you're going to have them for 9. And there might be a player option on the last year. You're roughly going to have your top stars for 8. And there's you have to somehow screw it up terribly to not have that, which you could point at the Kings perhaps with Halliburton. Like, there are teams that make mistakes, but the NBA can't stop that. Like, teams are going to do great things and they're going to do terribly stupid things, just in retrospect. Obviously, in the moment, they don't mean to do stupid things.
Do you think the NBA is going to bring back that amnesty that they had from a few years ago? I love that.
So amnesty was basically at the time they were changing the tax system. And so because they were changing the tax system and increasing the tax, then they gave teams like an exit clause, because you had signed all these players and you had built up a certain number of contracts. We're going to give you an amnesty because the tax system changed. What they did differently in 23 is they did change the tax system, but they didn't change it in year 1 or year 2. Well, it didn't change in year 1. It changed slightly in year 2. And then it changed more significantly actually this year. This past 25, 26 is the first year under this new tax system. So they gave a 2-year runway. So this way they didn't have to do amnesty. And the reason the amnesty is not there is in part is because the teams, like the richer teams, like Golden State, New York, Lakers, teams that have a greater gross income because of their local deals, et cetera, it's easier for them to absorb and pay off like a 30, 40, 50, $100 million contract of dead money, especially dead money that comes off your books, than it is for a smaller market team. So smaller market teams hated amnesty. And so when they changed the tax system, they changed it gradually so they didn't have to do another amnesty. So they call it the Allen Houston rule, but it wasn't actually used on Allen Houston.
It was used on, you ready? It was used on Chauncey Billups.
Junkyard.
No, it was on Chauncey Billups.
It was, well, no.
100%.
It was on Junkyard Dog, Jerome Williams.
I met Jerome
I have
Williams.
to go back. I think they used it more than once. There were 2 two amnesties. So we're probably talking about different amnesties. So I think the first one was on Jerome Williams, and I think the second one was on Chauncey.
So yeah, Jerome Williams, I guess, or Chauncey, all good.
Well, you were referring to the first ever amnesty used.
Right. There were two amnesties in the system, and then there was enough complaints from owners, especially in small markets, that they did away with that, and they just put in the new system over time. So it's a good compromise, I think.
I agree.
Eric, moving into that next phase, obviously we mentioned some of the intro on the salary cap and now some of those restrictions. So would you say the league is happy in terms of what the aprons of now were their intention?
At least the second apron.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
So,
for sure, the second,
like,
that's where the really gets complex in terms of...
If you ask 30 owners, 30 GMs, and all the staff and people in the media and players and agents, is everyone happy? No one's ever happy. That's just life. It's just the nature of things. It's like,
But the league as a whole, in terms of keeping some parity within the structure.
Right. Like, there's things to like and things to dislike. There's always things to argue. Like the NBPA and the NBA are the ones that negotiate this. They're building lists right now of things that they want to change. Both sides are. Things they like, things they don't. In fact, they just put in these new tanking rules.
I was going to ask you what your thoughts are on that, on the new rules.
Yeah, well, that's
I didn't love them, honestly.
Well, we could dig into that, but the idea is that isn't collectively bargained, at least the changes they put in, because it didn't impact the rules within the CBA. They had to get voted on by the Board of Governors, which are the 30 teams the teams basically voted on it. The governors are the controlling owners of each team. And they voted for it. I think it was 29-1. I think the Grizzlies voted against, reportedly. And so those are you have in 3 years, well, roughly, we'll have a new CBA. And that's when it goes to the drawing board, and they can actually make greater substantive change with the players and the league, where they can change how things work. Like if you were to say the NBPA, if there was no draft, they'd love to have no draft because it restricts player movement, right? Like you can't Victor Wembanyama can't come into the league and say, I want to join the Knicks. The Knicks can't say, we're going to sign Victor out of France. He has to go through the draft. The Knicks have to follow the rules of the draft, and they can't. It's all collectively bargained. Everyone gave up rights. The teams give up rights. The players give up rights. And that's where we'll see where it goes.
What would be your suggested change?
I mean, in the lottery itself, my main issue is I see what the NBA is trying to accomplish. They're trying to stop teams from having the motive to be awful. And I get that. And they are attacking it. They're putting it and turning it into more of a chaotic situation where you just don't know. And if you're really lousy, you're less likely to get a good pick. They're also saying, like, you have to draft better. But, to the Knicks' point of view, Cat was number one, but they didn't draft him, right? Jalen Brunson was a second rounder. You just go through. Josh Hart was late first, early second of the Lakers, right? I'm trying to remember if he was first or second.
I think it's asinine. Jokic even. I mean, you could look at so many guys.
Yeah, he was drafted during a Taco Bell commercial. But, equally, saying be better is great. But, I looked at,
that's
Jokic's
asinine.
Number.
If you ask me, it's
asinine. He was
asinine.
41, I think.
Yeah.
So, where Jokic was drafted, who's the next best player in the since the turn of the century at that number? And it's probably Jared Vanderbilt, who is a top 8 rotation player, not a starter. So saying be better is kind of cool, but it's also the draft is getting diluted by NIL money. And that's not the NBA's fault. That's just the world changed, and players are getting millions of dollars to stay in college. And that's not a bad thing, but it is something the NBA has to adapt to. So the second round of the draft is no longer as substantive as it was. You're not Jalen Brunson. I don't know if he came in when he left, but you're not going to get a lot of 4-year. You're going to get 4-year guys, but you're not going to get a sophomore or a junior who's more ready to play. You're going to get someone who's 22, a little bit older, probably more experienced, that maybe can help you win more, but not a high end. I mean, theoretically, less likely to pop later in their career because they're already they're closer to a finished product.
Right, exactly.
Jalen played 3 years.
The main issue I have is that teams like the Sixers in 2016, around then, 17, 18, whatever the years were, they branded the process, which was we're going to suck for 3 years. And teams are, that's the problem, is that like they are going to be bad. All teams over the course of a cycle are going to bottom out at some point. LeBron is going to be in Cleveland. They're going to build and trade picks and sign guys like Tristan Thompson and J.R. Smith to big money and try to win and go to the finals, and then LeBron leaves, and like they're just going to be terrible. They don't have the picks. They have bad contracts. It's going to take a year or 2 or 3 to unwind, and that's the nature of the beast. And we're putting them now in a position where it's going to take longer. Like the last rule changes went in 2019, it made things worse. Like the Pistons bottomed out, and it took 5 years instead of 3 because we took away odds. They twice jumped from worst, best team in the lottery, number 1 in the lottery, fell to 5. Worst possible outcome. In the old system pre-2019, they wouldn't have dropped that far. So, and, there's a Wembanyama type, there's a Cooper Flag type. There's not a lot of drafts that even have that level of player. So, and now we're saying you can't win number 1 more than one, like there's limits to
how many number 1 picks have we
like,
also seen bust? I mean, it's on top of that.
That's the other thing. And well, that's the thing is like you can make the right pick and it could be Greg Oden and his body breaks down, right? Or it's the wrong year and you just, Anthony Bennett, not a bad player, but like wasn't a number 1 level. Like Kenyon Martin had a great career, but he wasn't necessarily like a Victor Wembanyama or a LeBron James. And that's an all-star and a guy who went to the finals a couple of times. So that's not a criticism. I know Kenyon
broke his leg right before the tournament.
Yeah. But like, there's just a different level. And then even if like Donovan Mitchell wasn't number 1, Kobe wasn't number 1. Like it's
so many, Melo, etc. Yeah,
18-year-old kids.
Yeah, of course.
You're drafting kids who are not like the finished product yet.
I mean, it also, Eric,
projecting, but they will be.
It becomes interesting when you're talking about the international guys. Like Darko Milicic was drafted ahead of Melo. Like that's people are taking gambles on overseas talent. Also,
I mean, Darko supposedly his workout in front of NBA teams was like one of the best workouts that anyone had ever seen. And yeah, it's drafting. You need 3 or 4 cracks at it. Really 3. History. Like I ran through the data, and most teams suck for 3 years. Like you have a few exceptions. Like the Celtics made the incredible trade they did with the Nets to get what led to Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. So they only had to suck 1 year, and they got Marcus Smart, and then they were on their way.
But you could argue that they didn't really draft so well. I mean, it took that awful trade from the Sixers to move from from that spot, and then really a lot of those picks didn't pan out at all. In terms of
that's 100% true. Like if Danny Ainge, there's no criticism here. Built a great champion. Obviously, Brad Stevens now, Mike Zarin, like they do a great job. But like, yeah, if you do like a biopsy and go through every pick, it's like like the Sixers, like they had Okafor, they had Ben Simmons, who obviously was great for a minute, but never,
Zaire Smith,
Markelle
Fultz, yeah.
Right, like it's just the nature of things where you could have the smartest people making the best decisions. Now, there's also a certain level of politics and people also making decisions for the wrong reasons too. But even if you have purity and they just do everything right, and you do get the right player, and then it's Brandon Roy, who had a great brief career, but just fell off. His body broke down, and I love watching Brandon Roy play.
Yeah, look at the Spurs right now. They were god awful last year, and now they landed, one of the generational talents. So, like, if you do hit, you do hit. And I think they're being a little reactionary. I think that's a little bit of a problem right now. And I think they should talk to you and take a step back and understand a little more of what they should be doing.
In 3 years, the Spurs are going to be in a position where they're not going to be able to pay role players once they're paying all those rookies when they're paying Fox. Harper, Wemby.
It's going to be a problem sooner than later. And this is where people are like saying to me, "Oh, the Spurs should go out and get player X who costs a ton of money." Or the Thunder should go get Giannis or something crazy like that. And like the reality is like for the Knicks, like they need to pay this summer Victor Wembanyama on an extension. Assuming he's healthy next year, I'm going to assume that he's all NBA next year. Now, it might not be the case, but let's say it is. Most likely it is. He's going to get 30% of the cap. He's going to get a large number starting in 27, 28. The next year they have to pay Stephon Castle, and the year after that they have to pay Dylan Harper. I said Derek Harper.
Yeah.
Who's not even his dad, Ron Harper. But yeah, Dylan Harper is going to get paid after that. You have to pay Keldon Johnson at some point, and he's a valuable role player.
Of course.
Like, it is very expensive in the NBA.
Guys like Luke Cornett.
I'm pleading
field
for
these
Carter
guys,
Bryant
but-
to get minutes, but there's no minutes for him. He's a stud.
I mean, he's a baby too, and
he is.
even Harper's a baby, and this team is ahead of the curve.
I mean, their average
And,
age is
you know,
like
the Knicks have the
23.
experience level. The Knicks have the experience level, but the Spurs getting past the Thunder also, you develop experience on the fly. So let's see how it
No,
goes.
by the way, one thing I like about
I don't
that,
think that-
one thing I like about what the Knicks did is when they won, it was business as usual. They didn't celebrate. They have another chapter to go. Like you have to realize they did lose in Game 6 last year, the conference finals. So it's not like they're not battle tested. They've been through it. So that's one of the
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah, no, I mean, I spent many years covering Kobe Bryant, so I know the you don't celebrate until you've actually done something. You're up 2-0, job finished.
100%.
One of our mutual acquaintances has been talking about you for literally a decade. My good friend Steve, who's been a Laker guy, so he's always been giving me your insight for a very long time. But
Interesting.
yeah, Eric, as the league becomes more entrenched into this new collective bargaining agreement, which team do you think is in the best position to sort of capitalize on this next wave?
Well, so I think teams have adjusted, and like they're still adjusting, and they're seeing like we have to be really decisive in who we give money to. Yet there's also a competition. There's like competing factors. There's a competition for talent. So you spend on the talent, and usually teams are spending more than maybe they could or should. Like, did the Celtics need to give supermax deals to Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum when no one else could really afford what they were giving them? And the answer is no, they didn't have to. But there's are we your guys or are we not your guys? And if you're not going cheap, what are you saying to them?
Right.
There's that kind of philosophy of teams want to. Tim Connolly, who runs the Wolves, is really well liked by agents because he takes care of his players, and it feels collaborative and they get good deals. It makes it hard. He kind of put Denver in a win or similar to where the Knicks are, where it's like you put all the chips in and you got to win because this is who you are, and there's no real.
Well,
easy
to
way
that point,
improve,
Brunson
and
took
it worked.
a pay.
yeah, but
cut.
nobody saw that
Yeah,
ever
yes and
in
no.
history.
Yes and
120
no, yes and no.
million.
That-
What's your take?
That okay. So like I love Adrian Wojnarowski who tweeted that, and my job as I see it, and everyone has their own definition. When I'm breaking news, I break news without opinion and without shaping the news. I want it to just be here's the facts and let people. Now I will follow that up with my analyses. He tweeted that with the caging of why Brunson was doing this big favor. The reality is Brunson took the absolute most that he could possibly take in that moment. And the reason he took it is he could have waited a year and gotten more money by waiting. But now you're going into another season where maybe you're not going to be as good. Maybe you're going to get hurt. Maybe something is going to go wrong. And so he took the most money he could possibly get. It was favorable for the Knicks. It was favorable for Brunson to lock in that money. And I work with a lot of agents. I do a lot of consulting and advising. And you have to lock in as much money as quickly as possible because it is an industry, and to an extent, players are commodities, which sucks because they're human beings. But teams will, they have to pay for the best talent. If a player diminishes and falls off, whether it's injury, ACL, Achilles, these
Yeah, it
things
all could go
happen,
like that
you
in
have
1
to
minute.
lock in the money.
Yeah, it's Knick fans spreading
And
fake
so Brunson
news.
locked. It's not. I mean, it's not.
I'm messing.
The way it was broken, it was caged that he was doing them a favor, which, yeah, it helped them, and it was a
Right.
good thing. Sometimes two things can be true. It was mutually beneficial for both sides because Brunson locked in the most he possibly could, and he will get another contract. But just in case he doesn't, just in case something incredible happens,
he's still rich.
Halliburton tearing his Achilles. He's locking in generational money.
Of course.
And the money, that's my point of what I was saying earlier. It's like the money at this level, it's too high. If you're making $20-30 million a year, it's crazy money. And if you're at the upper echelon where you're earning 40 or 50 or even 60 like a Steph, it's incredible. And earn as much as you can. I want them. I'd rather they earn than, I'm not going to pick on any specific owner, but I'm not watching them play. I'm in LA, so I don't need to see Jeannie Buss or Mark Walter and Steve Ballmer in an exhibition game. I'd watch for 5 minutes, and then I'd be like, okay, I've seen enough.
I would
Right?
watch
We're
that
not
just for
seeing-
comic relief.
Yeah, but for like 15 minutes.
Yeah,
at
I'm
most.
kidding,
For
I'm
me,
kidding.
I can only do 5. You might get 15 minutes, and I can't do more than 5. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Like, let's see. But like, I want the players to earn, and so, and it's outrageous. And like, we could talk about, teachers and nurses and the people who should be earning in our society. It's a business, and I can't fix and change, equalize.
I
the
always
society.
I always tell people this, Eric. Teachers and nurses are doing God's work, but their jobs aren't generating that much money. These basketball players, they're printing money. They're selling jerseys. They're selling out arenas. If a nurse was selling out an arena, we would be paying that nurse. It's just the unfortunate truth.
It's the reality of the society we're in. So that said, if the league is bringing in 10 billion, I want the players to get that 5 billion. I want the players to get 50, 60, 40, 30, whatever they're getting. And as I advise folks, you have to get into an extension. The money's too, back when it was like 12 million and maybe you were going to turn down 20, you want to get to 20. You're taking 12 and you're passing on maybe a chance to get 20. That's
Right.
different. But if you're turning down 25 because you might want to get 30, but like 25, Lordy, like
It's a lot of
don't
money.
get 25 because you're risking 25 for $5 million. That's crazy to me. So, Brunson did the right thing for him. It was also the right thing for the Knicks. I don't think it was an example as portrayed. And Woj is great at what he did and what he still does. I have no qualm with him. Absolute respect. In that moment, I just do things a little differently than he does.
Understood.
I don't like to cage my facts, Katie.
We're going to close out with this final question.
I want to ask him one more question.
Oh, go ahead.
Eric, in terms of the current structure right now, which one or two teams do you see making wholesale changes this upcoming spring, summer to sort of alleviate their situations with their cap? And what one or two moves do you might see unfolding because of that in terms of players?
Right. It's a good question. It's difficult. The challenge is that the league has sort of shifted to extensions and trades as the modus operandi. That's how we're going to operate. They've purposefully reduced free agency. It was done intentionally. I've talked to the NBA. I've talked to the NBPA. From the NBPA point of view, it makes sense, right? Like, if your player can get into an extension like Brunson and lock in that money earlier, hell yeah, do it. So that means there are
Right.
more extensions. If there are more extensions, there are fewer players available. And while we have all these aprons, most of the teams aren't in the aprons. Most of the teams are below the tax. So they actually loosen the rules for trades for 2/3 of the league, maybe even more, maybe 25 teams. It's easier to make trades than it used to be. So the main way you need to improve is via trade and not as much free agency. There's only really 3 free agent teams this summer, teams with massive cap room. That's the Lakers, the Nets, and the Bulls. Now, there could be a few others, like the Hawks could get there, the Pistons, the Clippers. There's different ways, the Grizzlies maybe, but generally speaking, the teams that really have spending power. So if there's not really spending power, you have to do it through trade. And now we just threw a whole monkey in the works because no one really knows in the industry what a draft pick is worth. If you asked me before this change, I know how much, like the 5 picks or whatever for Bridges, I could point out, a few of them were kind of crappy firsts and it wasn't as heavy as it sounds, but I know the value of, they overpaid a little bit, but they didn't egregiously overpay like it was portrayed to be. That said, no one knows the currency because there's going to be new rules in 3 years. Who the hell knows what those rules are?
tough.
So no one wants to trade those future picks. And then the picks right now, it's I don't know, maybe a pick that was going to be 10 is now going to be number 1. So everyone's in complete
Disarray.
level of confusion.
Indiana must be
Which
burning.
is good and bad. Well, here's the thing, is that some teams will make very smart decisions right now. And some teams will make absolutely terrible decisions right now because they're just misreading the situation. And that's inevitable. And I'm not pointing at someone's smarter or dumber than anyone else. It's just that mistakes are made when things are uncertain and we don't know where things are going. And someone the Celtics were much better at reading where the last market was going than others when we had the big broadcast deal in. And everybody in 2016 was paying out crazy money to Joakim Noah, right? That was the Knicks one, right?
Ian Mahinmi
a ton of deals that went
got
out.
big contract.
Mahinmi, and it was in LA. It was Mozgov and Luol Deng. Everybody paid out, but the Celtics gave a couple of really short, non-guaranteed deals and saved their money. And then when the time came, they were able to
they were smart.
Horfords and Hayward and but eventually, obviously Hayward got hurt, but they were in a better position to make decisions because they didn't screw up.
Yeah,
and they had a better feel for where the league was going, the market was going, and I don't know who knows that and who's going to do well this run. I just think that in terms of the Lakers, are they moving on from LeBron is kind of the big question this summer, and if they are, what are they doing to surround Luka and possibly Austin Reeves? Are they keeping Austin? Those kind of questions. We have a question with the other LA team where, in theory, Kawhi Leonard's contract could be voided because of this whole investigation. We don't know what's going to happen there. And then Milwaukee is the big one. That's really the answer to the question is, what is Milwaukee going to do with Giannis? Because it really sounds like he won't extend there. And the owner came out, I don't know, about a month or so ago with what we already knew, and props for them for actually verbalizing it. If he doesn't agree to extend, then they have to trade him. And so I do think in this month, it might not be executed till July 6th. But I think before the end of this month, we'll know where Giannis is going. And probably in the next 2 weeks or so.
And
excited to see.
No, and the Bulls, it's amazing they have all that money and they gave Pat Williams the most ridiculous contract ever.
Well, the person who did that is no longer in charge.
Yeah,
so Bryson Graham took over. They got fired. So
Eric, I'm going to close this out with rapid fire questions. Just spitball answers. You ready?
Love this segment.
Best front office in the NBA right now.
I mean, you still got to go with the Thunder. I mean, even though they didn't win that, they do a hell of a job.
Most underrated GM. Underrated.
Ooh, underrated.
Plus underrated front office for that matter.
Underrated front office or GM.
Maybe one of each.
I like what Atlanta is doing right now, and I would say that I didn't like what Atlanta was doing for a long period of time. That's Onsi Saleh, who you just got an extension. He's doing. You just immediately. It's kind of like when the Knicks were just fumbling. I don't know what they're doing. And then suddenly it's like, oh wait, I see a strategy. They're starting to make smart moves. They're making diligent moves. I feel like that's happened in Atlanta. Obviously I like what the Knicks are doing. Let's see here. Phoenix is starting to improve. They haven't. Spurs do a great job. There's some I left out.
But you gave your top ones.
Clippers do a good job.
What's the most?
Well.
If you're making up a fake tree fund for signing Kawhi,
That's the difference.
Yeah, most cap savvy organization of all.
Boy, that's a good question. Maybe Boston. I feel like they run. Well, the Knicks too. Boston Knicks. Both of them have been really savvy. Thunder up there. Yeah, that's a good list.
You ready? Most overrated roster in the NBA.
Well, I'd say overrated based off maybe cap structure mixed in as well.
Fine.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Well, so how do you measure that? So I feel like people loved where Memphis was going, and they were getting all this credit for all their great decisions, and I was just like, I don't get it. And I feel like they've kind of just gotten worse every year since going to the playoffs and losing to the Lakers. So I haven't liked the direction from Memphis. I haven't loved the direction from Milwaukee. To me, they should have traded. Making difficult decisions is hard, but they should have been out of Giannis 2 years ago.
Right.
And I don't necessarily blame the challenge is you don't always want to blame the GM. Sometimes it's ownership decisions. Like if you have a great GM, but the owner's saying, hell no, we're not doing that. We're not trading Giannis. It don't matter if you're the GM because they're going to fire you.
Right.
They're not going to sign off on it. So there's an element. Obviously, Daryl Morey is out of a job, so I didn't love what Philadelphia did when they did what they did.
Just ask James Harden.
Philly's been a mess ever since they drafted Embiid, and they can't get it right.
Wait. Let's get back on track here. Rapid fire.
I'm just saying.
One team that'll surprise people next season that no one's talking about.
Who is surprising next year? So that would have to be basically a team that wasn't a playoff team.
I like Utah.
I do think I'm not gonna lie. I think New Orleans is gonna be better. I don't know what they're gonna do in terms of, but they're just if they're healthy, their roster is it makes more sense than it did over the course of this year. I'm not saying I'm in love with it, but I think they're better.
Well, it also gives them a little bit of solace to Joe Dumars that pick didn't land where it landed, because that would have been something.
The thing is you have to.
And I love Derek Queen. Derek Queen's, I think, a great player.
If you love Derek Queen and you really believe that he is a foundational piece, and you're giving up a risk, you got to do it. If you're the Pacers and you're like, we have a team that just went to the finals, let's say Halliburton's healthy, and we need a center because we lost Miles Turner, and we're going to take a risk on this pick with the Clippers to get Zubats. Like, you have to make these bold moves. And
Yeah, but they
for
also
the
had to be
Pelicans, I feel
really
like
down on Mathurin too.
well, it's not as much down on Mathurin because they like Mathurin. It's just that they couldn't afford him.
Right.
They're a team that won't go into the tax.
Right.
And so the general manager, again, I could point at them and say, oh, they're cheap. The general manager's cheap. The general manager is working within the parameters that the ownership sets, and if they won't let them go into tax,
Yeah, that's
then they
one
have to work
aspect
around
that we don't see. By the way, final question.
No, but one more thing. Just
whoa.
the fifth pick is just, I hear you in getting a center, but you knew that pick was somewhere in a draft that's this loaded. It's just, to me.
Yeah, but like number 5 is like Darius Acuff. Like the only center is a kid named Mara, who's like a young kid who probably can't start.
Only
on
Darius
championship level.
Acuff?
Like,
Don't get started with
I'm
him.
saying for
Darius
For a
Acuff
team-
could wind up being the best player in the whole draft.
yes, he could, but not for the Pacers. Assuming Halliburton's
I hear
healthy,
that.
who have Nemhard, who have Halliburton, who have TJ. Not okay. Obviously, you would prioritize.
But what
Acuff,
about that as a
but like-
tradable asset, Eric, if they had that pick as
and,
well?
And it was a tradable asset, and they got a top 10. And last year, not so 24, 25,
Right.
a top 5 center in the league in Zubats. You could even argue top 3 or top 4. And this year, the Clippers just weren't as good, but Zubats is a hell of a center. They got exactly what they needed for a championship contender. Obviously, Hallie has to come back and be Hallie.
I get that. I understand that for sure.
So, you know, and if it was risking 1, 2, 3, or 4, we'd be having a different conversation. It depends on what you think of Boozer and Dybasta and
I don't think Boozer should go in the top 8.
Getting off.
So
I
really
want to ask
don't.
you.
Go ahead.
Eric, I want to ask you a final question. What's one contract you would not want on your books out of all the contracts in the league right now?
Well, unfortunately, it's Joel Embiid. You know, that's just the reality. Injuries suck. I love Embiid as a player when he's healthy. And like we could say what he did and didn't do at the most important moments in a playoff series, and you know, fans will say, "Oh, he didn't show up," or he couldn't win the big game. I don't care about that. They've always had injuries. They've never had like the exact right roster, and injuries have derailed the league of one of the best centers generationally. I saw him come to town in LA and over the weekend and score like 100 points against Lakers and Clippers. He had like a couple of 50s, and I saw Shaq in his prime, and like the closest that we've had, and Jokic is a different thing. But I'm saying in terms of like power and force and skill, Embiid that weekend, I'm like, I haven't seen someone play like this, since Shaq. And so, I love Joel for who he is and what he represents, and I think he's great as a person. But unfortunately, the injuries have sapped him of being that elite talent. He was an MVP, like what, less than 4 years ago?
4 years ago, yeah, 4
Not
years
that
ago.
long ago. Maybe I'm off. Maybe 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you're talking like 57 or 58, and then 62, and then he has a last year at 67. It's just such an egregious number for a guy that you just can't rely on to play. 50 games, let alone
Someone
80
like Bill
games or
Walton
70 or
had that.
65 games, and then you don't know if he's healthy in the playoffs.
Eric, you would take Boozer in the top
Bill
5?
Walton is amazing, but injuries.
Right, it's injuries
Say
kill
again?
you.
You would take Boozer in the top 5?
Yeah. I'm not necessarily a college scout, so
Right.
like I'm really pro personnel. I don't watch a lot of college ball, and I rely on a lot of my
I'm with him.
colleagues and students. I love college ball. I just can't do my job and also do college. Like if
Right.
you're going to be, if you I picked my so-called expertise, and I can't be that while also really being an expert at college. That said, I've heard so many things, both positive and negative. He's polarizing. I've heard he's a 20-10 guy who's going to give you tremendous connectivity and creation as a playmaker and provide you defense, even if he's not a great athlete in terms of elite athlete. Also, I've heard that he's not an elite athlete and he's just going to be mediocre and he's not going to be great. Even if he's a good 20-10, it's not going to be a 20-10 that gets you to the promised land type player. So
Right.
I don't know the answer there, and I'll let the people who really their job it is to know that, make those decisions, and I can't wait to see. I think Peterson fits in a lot of teams as a dynamic guard, and Dybasta is a prototype attacking forward, 3-4 scorer. yeah, I can't wait to see. And we left out a few other dudes.
Yeah, I mean, the guards are
I can't wait to
special.
see
It's
how
a
it
loaded
keeps going.
guard.
Dave,
draft.
you want to close out with any final questions? Because I think we're good.
No, that sounds great. I appreciate you, Eric. It was a
Eric, I
pleasure.
appreciate the time you gave us. Like you said, it's the busiest time of your schedule, and you carved out God knows how long for us. So I appreciate that. And
course.
I look forward to chatting with you again sometime.
Thanks, Eric.
Of course,
Appreciate you.
anytime. Thanks,
Thanks,
Robbie.
I appreciate you.
Anytime, guys.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it.
Last call. Sutton and Simmons. Last call. Uncut opinions. Last call. What the polish won't say. Pull the stool up. The rounds on the way.